So I think I'd like to start by asking who we are now, really. Try to imagine yourself sitting on a rock in front of the ocean, contemplating the vastity of the sea, or walking through Venice in the Caigo, its very thick fog that deletes any concrete point of reference. How do you feel? What sensation you do experience? Probably dizziness. Maybe you'd feel somewhat disoriented. It is a sense of life suspension that we have during those times, between a solid past and the uncertain present. Well, this sensation is similar to what we have during those liminal times in which life requires that we shed our old clothes and wear new ones. Or at times it even requires that we shed our skin and grew a new one. Try to imagine that. It is painful. Yes, it is really painful. Uncertainty, disorientation, confusion, those are very common and strong sensations that we have during those in-between times. So, who are we in those times? What happened to our past self, and what will our new future and partly unknown self be? Well, we don't know. We're there waiting for our life to take a direction, and we don't know which direction it will be. This existential state is a common state, and we are there on the brink of change. And yet, I claim that these moments are actually moments that are really important. They're difficult, painful, but at the same time, they give us freedom. They give us freedom to reflect upon who we are. They give us freedom to imagine who we could become. I'm a memory researcher, so I know a lot about human memory, and I know that human memory and our life comes in themes. We remember our family, our friends, our school, our work, and so on and so forth. And that's the way we retrieve memory usually. We retrieve memory from the top down to the various minimal details of the events. Our life is remembered perfectly only by a very, very small handful of people that we are lucky enough we have studied in our lab. They remember almost every day of their life starting from age 10 onwards. But most of us are not that lucky. Most of us remember life only partially, scantily, only in little pieces here and there, in a vague way. And our memory for our past is rarely completely accurate. In spite of that, I also know as a memory researcher that memory shapes our identity. Memory makes who we are now. Also because one of the functions of our memory is to enhance the idea that we have about ourselves now, comparing to ourselves before. We need to think that now we are better than we were, because this is a sense of growth and development in our life that we cannot lose. As a memory researcher, I also know that life is made in transitions. So there are moments in life that determine who we are. And those transitions are really memorable. If you consider, for example, the reminiscence bump, it is a phenomenon in memory that tells us that the experiences that we remember most are the ones that have been really transformative. And basically, when are these experiences occurring? During childhood, adolescence, early adulthood. But if we actually have important experiences, transformative experiences, also later in life, as for example, studies by a colleague, Norman Brown, at the University of Alberta has shown, we actually can see that we have not just one big reminiscence bump early in our life, but a number of them. And their dimension depends on the importance of these transformative events during our life. And what is that we remember? We remember, for example, the first time we were out without our parents, or the first day of school. And the cry of the child in those moments actually tells us how painful those moments of disorientation can be, those moments of change can be. We remember the first love, we remember the first job, we remember, if we are not lucky, the first war, we remember the first pandemic. And I think that one we can remember. There are so many changes in life. And so all these changes shape our memory. Who are we then, now? If our personal identity has been shaped by our memory, and our memory is scaffolded by those moments of transition, then those moments of transitions, those moments of change, have made us who we are over and over throughout our life. We have moved from one person to another, to another, to another, to become who we are now today. Some of these changes are determined by physiology. Again, childhood, adolescence, early adulthood. And these are drastic and irreversible changes from one state to the next. Irreversible, we cannot go back being a child. It can be so overpowering, this moment, that societies have organized rites of passage, rites of coming of age, in order to ensure that each and every individual can walk through these times, maintaining, preserving their mental well-being, and also remaining in touch with their social group and with its norms. In our time, in our world, for example, religious rites like communion, bar mitzvah, they depend on the many religions that exist on the world. They serve that very aim, or they used to serve that very aim, I have to say, because nowadays the models that society proposes, the plurality of models, makes these transitions very difficult, and actually they extend this existential time of uncertainty, which is difficult as a time in development. And if you consider the large number of migrant miners that come literally to our shores, we can ask what we can do for them. Well, we can open our arms, and we can help them navigate through those seas, those treacherous seas of dramatic change, dramatic personal change. In other societies, in other cultures, these rites of passage are more clear and univocal. And even if they require to show stamina, courage, endurance of pain, and sometimes a really severe pain, they certainly help to carry people through these times from one state to the next. And in every society, those rites of passage have a main goal. And the basic goal is actually to maintain stability and consistency in a person's, in an individual's identity. We need that. We need that because we need the idea that the self that we are today is connected to the self that we were yesterday. And this is necessary to keep this sense of normalcy in our existence. So consider what happens to people with severe retrograde amnesia. Oliver Sacks, neurologist, tells the story of Jimmy G, a 49-year-old man who suffered from a very severe form of Korsakoff syndrome that wiped out his memories for age 19 onwards and then made it difficult to create new memories. Of course, Jimmy could not live a normal life as he was stranded constantly in a constantly changing world that was meaningless for him because he could not recover any identity for himself. So it is needless to say that, on one hand, memory is extremely important for our life and for our well-being. The second thing is that our mind craves continuity. And we need to feel that we are connected to the past. For this reason, the brain is actually a predictive machine. The brain takes into account the content of our past to understand the present and to predict our future. And there is very strong and repeated and solid evidence nowadays, neuroimaging evidence, that show a big overlap in brain areas that are involved in both remembering the past and thinking and imagining the future. So basic stability is a staple for our ability to negotiate life successfully. And yet, in those times of change, stability is really the thing that is at risk. So it can be disorienting, confusing, and really painful. So what can we do about that? Let's go back to the rock in front of the ocean. If we sit there and we are open enough to understand the feelings that those situations convey and trigger, and if we're lucky enough to have the time, then those experiences, it is true they remain painful and hard, but actually they can become beautifully transformative. We're in front of the ocean, but actually we are in front of ourselves. We're able to reflect upon our past, to what life has become for us, to what happened to our identity. We can distill those past experiences and open our mind to the multiplicity of possible selves, of possible people that we can become. And those are taking shape in front of our eyes. If we take the time, of course, we need to keep our eyes open. So we can play with those possibilities. During those times, we have the freedom to change, which is not a minor gift, trust me. We can play thought experiments with our future life. And this process can bring great discoveries about ourselves, as thought experiments have, for example, brought great discoveries in science. Consider just the thought experiment by Galileo on endless motion, in which he simply imagined a ball rolling down a slope and then encountering a flat surface. And with the simple mental game, he was able to revolutionize the approach to motion that Aristotle proposed at the beginning. So, sitting in front of the ocean, we can discard what we don't like about ourselves. And in part, we can reinvent who we want to be. I need to leave out for time the necessary gap between the real self and the ideal self. We can never become our ideal self, but we can, trust me, transform ourselves at almost any age. At times, we look back at the train of our life and at the direction that it has taken. And we feel that actually it has taken a direction of its own. We had no control over it, or little control, and the transformations that we have gone through did not depend on us. Our contribution was minimal. Circumstances made us who we are now. Well, that's in part true. That's not true. But if we take the time during those liminal moments to understand the direction that our life is taking now, we can become the people the person that we feel we really are. Thus, I start with my first wish. My first wish is for us all that we become able to enjoy those times in which we seem lost. And instead, what's happening is that we're shaping that self that we feel is our own. At this moment, this is my second wish, I wish the same for myself too, as I'm navigating this very uncertain seas of the fresh retiree, navigating the direction of a person that I still have to define. I don't know who I'm going to become. At first I thought, isn't it too bad that there are no rites of passage for retirement? It would be much easier. But actually, it is best that there aren't, because at the moment I'm enjoying the ride, and I have to confess also the dizziness that freedom is giving me at this time to become someone I have not fully met yet. And then there is my third wish. Again, my third wish for us all. So my wish for us all is this: may we learn not only to endure those moments in which we feel lost and suspended, but also to recognize them for what they really, really are. They are the very places in which we become who we are. Thank you.